So listen, our listeners are pretty smart people, and I'm sure they've guessed that this week on our state by state march to election day, we're diving into Georgia because we have an AJC reporter with us. And Georgia, to me, is a fascinating story in 2020. This is a state that has not gone to a Democratic presidential candidate since 1992. And as recently as July, Democrats were calling it a stretch to even think about taking Georgia. And yet, in September, Trump started dumping just buckets of cash into the state. And the president's campaign is now spending more in Georgia than it is in Michigan, which is just an eye-popping development to me. So let's figure out what this means. First, I'm going to you, Adam. Give us the state of play. What do the polls say?
Yeah, I mean, Georgia has been a very tantalizing state for Democrats for many cycles now, really all the way back since 2008 when Barack Obama got within 5 points there of John McCain. You know, Democrats have always said this is going to be the next state. You know, every election they've been saying that this is going to be the year where we finally, turn it at least purple, if not flip it into the Democratic column. And 2020 has certainly now presented the best opportunity for them to do that since, as you mentioned, Kristin, since 1992, the last time they won it. Right now, the polls are showing a dead even race. Joe Biden even has a slight advantage. If you look at the polling averages out there right now, I think it's important to remember while, Trump was able to win the state fairly easily in 2016, he only won it with less than 51% of the vote when you include in some of the third party candidates there who aren't as much of a factor this time around. So it's not as if, he won it with an overwhelming majority 4 years ago. Factor in Joe Biden, his strength with black voters, his strength with white suburban voters compared to where Hillary Clinton was 4 years ago. Donald Trump, of course, his job approval rating, his just handling of the pandemic has soured voters in Georgia and nationally. And that's where you have us today. It still is a right-leaning state, but given Trump's weaknesses, here we are less than 4 weeks out for the election, and it's basically a tie ball game.
All right. So, Tia, that's what the polls say. Do the lawn signs agree in the state of Georgia?
So it's funny you should ask that because I'm stuck in Washington. So I have to learn a lot of that from my colleagues who are down in Georgia. But to answer your question, it depends on where in Georgia you are. Georgia is one of those states with one major city. And then the farther you get from the city, the more rural it becomes. So in a lot of ways, people talk about there being kind of two Georgias in some ways. And so in the Atlanta metro area, which is usually about a third of the voting population, very Biden heavy, very blue. But one of the reasons why Biden is doing better in Georgia is because that blue area is expanding out from the city into the suburbs, into the now exurban area, as we like to call it, those outer ring suburbs right before you get to the real rural areas. So still in rural Georgia, though, that's Trump country. And so the question is, how much can Biden kind of expand that progressive base from Atlanta outward?
So when you think about the changes that have happened politically in Georgia and that population shift out or expanding out of Atlanta, is that what we were seeing with Stacey Abrams, or is there more to the Stacey Abrams phenomenon that seems to have so invigorated Democratic Party activists around the possibilities in Georgia?
Well, Stacey Abrams did a couple of things much different than statewide Democratic candidates in the past. And I got to see it up close. I was actually assigned to cover the closing weeks of Stacey Abrams' campaign, and I followed her across Georgia. Georgia has 159 counties. And as we've said, a lot of those counties are very rural, not heavily populated. Stacey Abrams campaigned in every single county at least once. And so she worked to, she said she was trying to get every vote. So even if there was a rural Northeast Georgia county that she had no chance of winning the county overall, she said there are still some votes there I can get. So that's a blueprint she helped set. But she also worked hard to enfranchise and fire up voters who don't normally participate in the election process. Your younger voters, your Black voters, and other ethnic minority groups, And so that's the Stacey Abrams blueprint. And we do see that being duplicated a little bit by Biden. You know, now because Georgia is in play, the Biden campaign is staffing up, is increasing its campaigning in the state, and it is looking at these different coalitions of voters. So it's not just Biden for Georgia. There was a Greeks for Biden in Georgia thing the other day. And, you know, he's got different pockets of voters he's trying to reach out to in a way that he hopes can broaden his coalition.
You know, so interesting, Adam. We talk about this demography as destiny theory constantly because we came up with Ron Brown's team back at National Journal, but it seems to play out in Georgia, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to Tia's point, you know, if Democrats are going to win in a state like Georgia, they can't just focus on one area of the state. Certainly, it's going to be critical for them to drive up Black turnout in the city of Atlanta. That was a huge, you know, missed opportunity for Hillary Clinton in 2016. So Biden's going to have to get up, you know, to Obama levels, to Stacey Abrams levels, and then some, right? Because either Obama or Abrams actually won the state. But then he's going to have to couple that with, you know, the growing white, you know, suburban college-educated population that's just growing year after year in the Metro Atlanta area. But then he's also got to cut into Trump's margins in rural Georgia. He can't let him run up the score there like he did in 2016. He's got to kind of do all three of these things to assemble that coalition to win in a state like Georgia. And it certainly seems potentially doable. As Tia said, you know, the Biden campaign is starting to pour resources into the state. It's certainly still not one of their top tier targets, but at this point, they've raised enough money that they can actually start to really play in the state.